Five Nights at Freddy's is a horror game franchise that's been around for over a decade now, and because of this, there's been a lot of ups and there's been a lot of downs. Today we're going to be discussing one of those downs, the FNAF Ruin DLC. Hello everyone, and I am Reese, and in today's video we're going to be discussing the gameplay, horror, and story of the FNAF Ruin DLC and why I believe it fell short. I've also enlisted the help of another FNAF YouTuber in this video, so make sure to stick around to the end for that. Just for a second, I want you guys to think of the least scary FNAF game in your opinion. Well, excluding FNAF World, of course. I'm sure most of you guys probably thought of Security Breach. It has super bright and colorful graphics, the most non-intimidating animatronics, and an aloof soundtrack, and it's completely free roam. In my opinion though, I believe that Security Breach is actually not the least scary FNAF game, and it's actually its sequel, Ruin. Let's take a second and rewind back to the beginning of Ruin. The Pizzaplex is now in ruins, and Fazbear Entertainment has labeled the damages as being caused by an earthquake. We enter the damaged building as Cassie, a friend of Gregory's, who seems to have some deeper connections to here than we're initially led on to. Cassie explores a bit of the Pizzaplex before finding a flashlight. Now, I have a few things to even say about this beginning segment. The first jump scare occurs when the player tries to retrieve a flashlight from a seemingly broken down staff bot. When we try to grab it, it reactivates and scares us. When we walk up the stairs to the gift shop, a machine falls down the stairs and jump scares us as well. Then, as we're walking onwards, a light jump scares us, Ruin Chica jump scares us, and finally a Chihuahua version of Monty jump scares us as well. I don't know if you guys are picking up on what all of these jump scares have in common, but I definitely have. They're all scripted. Every single one of those jump scares are in the exact same place every single playthrough. This causes them to be effectively terrifying in the very first playthrough, but after that, they're honestly just more annoying and inconvenient than anything. This is one of my biggest issues with Ruin. Although it's a completely terrifying and cool experience the first playthrough, after that, it's honestly, for lack of better words, boring. Now for comparison, let's think back to Security Breach. Although Security Breach is fundamentally a more upbeat and happy game, it's still very anxiety-inducing at times. The daycare and endo sections of Security Breach are great examples of this, which we'll touch on more later. The Ruin DLC takes those sections though, and pretty much eliminates any of the scare and anxiety in them. They make the scary parts of it, well, scripted and predictable. The lack of scare in Ruin is not my only gripe with the game though. It's also just the gameplay fundamentals. After Monty jump scares us and pulls us into the abyss, we find ourselves in a now destroyed Monty Golf. We end up being jump scared by MaskBot, and surprise, surprise, it's scripted yet again. We're given a virtual augmented neural network integration unit, or a Vanny mask for short. We also meet Helpy with this mask, and Helpy is quite an odd character. Sometimes he appears to be helping us, and others he turns purple and is seemingly infected by the mimic. The Vanny mask also introduces us to our first issues with the Ruin DLC's gameplay mechanics. This mask allows Cassie to solve puzzles, interact with security nodes, and glitchy segments of the AR world. And fun fact, this is the only gameplay mechanic. The entirety of Ruin is nodes here, nodes there, nodes everywhere. Not only that, but the puzzles don't even change with each playthrough. The nodes will always be in the exact same spots, and the camera symbols will always be the exact same. This is such a simple thing to fix by either changing the symbols that are on the cameras or the route of the puzzles each playthrough to give this DLC some unpredictability that it severely lacks. You'd think this is my only issue with Ruin though, right? It's just the excessive nodes and scripted jump scares, right? After going through the mini segment of Monty Golf where it's just nodes and Gregory, are you there? We enter my least favorite part of Ruin, the daycare. In Security Breach, the daycare is one of the only parts in the game where you're secluded to one area of the Pizzaplex, it's pitch black, and there's a demonic daycare attendant chasing after you. You have to crouch down and crawl through the playsets in the daycare, which feel a lot more claustrophobic and stressful than any section of Ruin that I can think of. Now, the Ruin DLC does have a daycare section as well, but they somehow managed to ruin it. Pun intended. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved Sun and Moon in Security Breach, and I loved Eclipse in Ruin, but I do have some issues with him. For starters, there's only one jump scare from Eclipse in the entire game, and it's scripted. This means that anytime you replay Ruin, you will see the only jump scare coming. This takes away all the anxiety and horror that Security Breach was able to capture in this segment. Secondly, the entire time that you're in the daycare, Eclipse is just standing on top of the play structures crying out to you. There is no threat in this entire section. It just consists of the player walking throughout the area, doing the camera nodes, and turning on generators. I feel like we all just glazed over the fact that Eclipse never once even walks towards the player. Like, hello? Why? Because of this, Ruin essentially took out the entire threat and scare of my favorite section in Security Breach. Now that you all have a visual of the current daycare in Ruin, let's imagine a much better one. Imagine you enter the daycare section and are greeted by the same scripted jump scare, because I don't necessarily think that taking that out will benefit the daycare, as it is a semi-important cutscene that introduces us to our next antagonist. I should also clarify that I definitely don't have an issue with some scripted jump scares in games, but I do have an issue with the scripted jump scares in Ruin because they're the only jump scares in Ruin. After this though, imagine that Eclipse is taken over by Sun and Moon in different cycles. Every few seconds, Moon will take over and fly off the top of the structure to hunt after you through the play structures, much like in Security Breach, but after his cycle is done, Sun will regain control of Eclipse and go back on the top of the structure for a set period of time, giving the player a small break. This way, there's still a semi-threat throughout the segment, and Sun can still be atop of the structure for Cassie to be ready to reboot him. These simple changes would make this section so much scarier as you're running around trying to do nodes as well as turn on generators. I truly believe that I would have loved the daycare section of Ruin if there was even just a slight threat to it. If Eclipse had even attempted to go after Cassie, this section would have immediately improved. Now let's move on to another notably scary section in Security Breach that was not scary at all in Ruin. The endo section. In Security Breach, you're trapped underground in the pitch black with just the endoskeletons left to hunt you down. It feels claustrophobic as you're trying to find your way out of the tunnels to escape. One wrong turn and you could be dead. In Ruin though, the claustrophobic and pitch black aspects are stripped away completely. This version of the endo section in Ruin is completely out in the open now, as of the endos. Why? I guess we'll never know, because all this truly achieves in my mind is removing what set the endo section apart in Security Breach. In this section, it's more annoying than anything. It's not dark, it's not enclosed, and all you're doing is running around doing the nodes while avoiding the endos. There's no grand mission here either, like in Security Breach when you were trying to find a badge to be able to escape. All there is just more and more repetitive nodes. This will become a theme here. Putting a previously scary and claustrophobic section out in the open like this is asking to make it way less scary. One way to easily just fix this section is by putting it in a different area rather than in this open hallway. A good example would be putting the endo section after Cassie falls through a vent, because Cassie falls through a vent 3 times in the game. Like, oh my god, Cassie, what is your luck? Now imagine instead of walking into the bright and open endo section, you fall from a vent into the basement tunnels where they were in Security Breach, which are still filled with endos. You could search for the nodes here, which would be so much scarier. Monty's catwalk segment is yet another good example of a section with absolutely no threat. Apparently Monty wanders the catwalks with us, but I've never personally seen him in any of my playthroughs that I can recall. This is because the only way Monty is able to start chasing us is if we equip the Vanny mask for too long and Mixus spawns him. This makes absolutely no sense to me. All we do in this section is just travel through here, do nodes, with the only threat being the slippery floors that you can fall off of. Roxy's salon is yet another great example. Roxy appears right when you enter and you hear a little monologue from her, then she completely disappears and you're left to do the nodes with no threat whatsoever. Eventually, you leave the main salon and travel through more of Roxy Raceway. While this portion may seem a little tense at first, all you're doing is guiding Roxy through the area with Gregory's voice. You have to hit the same button over and over again, and there's no real challenge here. You never actually get chased by the main threat in this section, Roxy, once. The only 2 slightly scary parts of this section are yet again 2 more scripted jump scares. These include the go-kart one where Roxy sends it after you, and when Roxy grabs you, assuming you're Gregory. Just like every other scripted jump scare in this game, after the first playthrough, they're not scary or effective at all. Honestly, I feel like Steelwell Studios assumed that the only way they could make this game scary is with shock factor, so they completely discredited any replayability. One of the things that I absolutely loved in Security Breach was the replayability aspect, and they completely stripped that away from us in Ruin. In this game, your first playthrough, second, and even 100th will be the exact same. After completing those 2 segments, the player moves on to Bonnie Bowl. Now, I know I've had a lot of issues with this game so far, but but I by far had the most issues with Bonnie Bowl. The premise here is to use an audio lure to guide the mini music men away from the nodes that Cassie has to activate. The only issue though is sometimes that it just doesn't work in the slightest and a random music man stays and kills the player. This glitch isn't rare either. I usually run into it at least twice in every single playthrough. That glitch on top of more repetitive nodes just makes this section almost unbearable. I will say the one good thing about Bonnie Bowl is definitely the Easter eggs though. If the player manages to deactivate all the wet floor signs up until this point, they can unlock a secret room where we get our first and only look at Glamrock Bonnie, which, by the way, who do you guys think killed him? Monty? Roxy? The Mimic? Let me know down below. Enough about Bonnie Bowl though, let's talk about one of the only chase scenes in the game, Glamrock Freddy's in Fazer Blast. As Glamrock Freddy's #1 fan, I wanted to love this section so much, and I love Fazer Blast and Security Breach, so I was very excited, but much like many of the other segments in this game, it fell so short in Ruin. Now, Glamrock Freddy's chase itself isn't really what I have an issue with, it's more about what happens after the chase. After you finally finish the main chase, you're brought to the AR inhibitor, which is the device Mixus uses to stop Cassie from wearing or taking off her mask at certain points in the game. This whole chase scene leads up to this as you're finally able to put your mask back on. Freddy breaks through a wall and tensions are high, and then he just slowly walks around. I'm not making this up, by the way. You can legitimately beat him to it by walking. This is yet another segment that I just wish had a bit more of a threat to it. I feel like even just a little bit more, it could have improved so much and made the stakes and anxiety so much higher. Finally, after doing all of those gosh darn nodes throughout the game, Gregory tells us that there is only one final node that we have to deactivate. But this one's gonna be the hardest, not because of skill, but because of sadness. Cassie is forced to deactivate Roxy, the animatronic that's been there for her for so long and for all of her lonely birthdays. I actually sobbed the first time that I had to play this. It was so sad. I can't do it. That's so sad. Honestly, props to Steel Wool for this entire moment. It's beautifully done. Finally, after shutting down Mixus, we find ourselves face to face with Gregory. But it's not Gregory. It's the Mimic. Speaking of the storyline though, I do have a couple complaints with that, but I'll keep them short and sweet. Although it was very easily understandable and fixed a lot of lore issues that we had with Security Breach, it was a bit too easily understandable. For example, everyone knew that it wasn't going to be Gregory immediately after the trailer dropped. Actually, even after the first teaser image dropped. This is mainly because the Tales of the Pizzaplex books had been teasing a new villain in the franchise for a while now, the Mimic. So essentially, the big twist, aside from the elevator drop of course, everyone already knew was gonna happen? Sure, I guess it still was a cool reveal, but I wish they didn't serve all the clues to us on a silver platter. Now, I'm not gonna try to compare the newer games to the older ones, because quite frankly, they're so entirely different. But that was one of my favorite parts of the old games, and what made them so ominous. Not knowing exactly what happened to the missing kids or Afton, and then slowly piecing it together through theories and hints within the games was so fun, and made the lore so much more intriguing. With Security Breach and Ruin though, the lore is either too straightforward or way too confusing, never finding the right middle ground. Enough of my rant though. Honestly, at the end of the day, I still did enjoy Ruin's storyline a lot more than Security Breach's, but I just wish it weren't so predictable. Still not convinced of my point though? Need more proof? Well, thankfully I recruited Respawn for this exact reason, so let's hear her.
Hello, it's Respawn. I just wanted to pop in and give my 2 cents about the Ruin DLC for Security Breach. When the DLC first came out, I feel like I had rose-colored glasses on. I didn't really judge it that harshly. So overall, love Security Breach. Not a huge fan of Ruin though. And why is that? Well, I just don't think it's super replayable. So while I think that the Ruin DLC is important and I liked the story aspect of it, actually playing it though, I didn't really like the nodes. I didn't really like switching between the AR and like real world. I didn't really enjoy like the mask mechanic that much. Just replaying it, I find it to be more tedious than fun. The first time I played it and experiencing everything for the first time, sure, it was very fun, but like now going back to it, I'm like, oh, okay, there's the mixes again. All right, take the mask off. And it's just like, I don't know, it's not as scary as it originally was. A lot of people really liked Ruin because it felt like a scary version of Security Breach. But to be honest, it kind of loses that fear factor for me after you finish playing it for the first time, which happens with some horror games, but this one I feel like especially that happens with. Hope y'all enjoy the rest of the video, and don't forget to subscribe to Reese.
I completely agree with everything that Ree just said. I mean, the replayability just really isn't there for me, Ree, and many other players. But if you guys want to check out Respawn's channel for yourself, it'll be linked down below in the description. Although I've been pointing out a lot of my problems with the DLC, I still wanted to point out a few things that I think it did very well. One thing for certain are the animatronic jump scares. They're so thoughtfully animated, especially in comparison to Security Breaches. The animatronic designs are also quite neat, especially Eclipse. But the main redeeming factor in Ruin is the storyline. Security Breach's story is, again, messy and confusing at best, and Ruin really helped to make it more cohesive and understandable, and I do applaud it for that. I also thought that Cassie was a well-written character who was very unique, and it was nice to have a female protagonist for a change. I also did really like the environment building in Ruin, especially the AR world. I think it looks beautiful to the eye. Overall, for the average one-time gamer, the Ruin DLC is a solid experience. If you're not a YouTuber, streamer, or just someone who likes to replay the games that they've purchased, Ruin would be a good choice for you. It is a really good one and done experience because I loved my first playthrough. The replayability though is completely sacrificed due to the overuse of scripted jump scares, the overuse of the node mechanic, which is copy and pasted into every single environment of the game, and the lack of threat overall. If the gameplay had even been slightly tweaked in each environment to make it a little more specific to where you are and added a bit more of a threat, I truly believe that Ruin could have been in one of my top favorite games. Ruin sadly did not hit those marks though. But thank you guys so much for watching, I really appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe if you love indie horror, and shout out to my channel members. I love y'all so much and I can't wait to see y'all next time. Bye bye!